Thank you, Noreen. I love that old hymn, Victory in Jesus. I'm sure a lot of you recognize that song. We do have victory. We have salvation. Is it through my works or my services? No, it's not. I have salvation through Jesus Christ, His blood for us. Amen. So for several weeks we've been talking about our services and our works and why we serve God. Let's look at Romans 12, verses 1 through 2. We have been studying Jesus' coming and His death for us and the reason we serve. Our response to His salvation for us is the reason we serve Him. Makes sense, right? Suppose you owed a lot of debt for something, and someone pays off that debt for you. What are you to do for that person? You would want to do anything you could to show your appreciation. It's the same idea for Jesus Christ. He paid a debt for us, and so we owe our lives to Him. I'm missing something here. Got it. Paul is writing here and says, I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice. Living sacrifice. Sacrifice means death. What does that mean? It means your life, using your life, your whole life, for Jesus, for God. Holy, acceptable unto God. Why? Which is your reasonable service. Because Jesus died for you. And it says, and be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. What is the will of God? Many pastors preach, well, what is will of God? What is God's will for your life? It's using your skills for His glory, serving Him, serving God. We've been looking at different kind of skills and services that one can do, and we've been studying that. In Romans 12, 6 through 8, it says, and having then gifts differing according to the grace that is given to us, whether prophecy, let us prophesy according to the proportion of faith, or ministry, let us wait on our ministering, or he that teacheth on teaching, or he that exhorteth on exhortation. He that giveth, let him do it with simplicity. He that ruleth with diligence. We're going to be looking at that today. He that ruleth. Then he that showeth mercy with cheerfulness. So we've been studying these things. We've looked at prophecy, ministry, teacher, exhortation, giving. We'll be looking at the sixth one, which is ruling or administration. What's your sign for administration? This, okay. So one who is good at ruling or administration, loves details, loves everything in order, everything to be perfect and in order, and sometimes might be called a little bit of OCD, right? So today we have ruling administrator, loves details, order. Who enjoys doing puzzles?
Oh.
For me, this is what I think about it. I do not like puzzles. Why? Well, you get one piece. Well, first you separate the edges from the middle pieces. You put them in two different piles, and then you work on the frame of the puzzle, and it just makes me crazy. No, thank you. That is not my skill. Detail-oriented is not my personality, not my skill, but I do try to practice to improve in that area. We're going to be looking at this today. So first, ruling defined. What does it mean? We see the definition in the Bible in Romans 12, verse 8. It says, "He that ruleth with diligence." What does ruleth mean? Ruling. The Greek word prostemi, which means to stand before, to manage. There's two. There's a pro and a pre, meaning to stand before. There's also a histemi, which means a prolonged form of meaning to stand before. So literally, this word means to stand before, just like I am standing before you. I have your attention. I can look around and see how we can all work together to make it work, kind of like a puzzle. One who has this skill, it can be like an administrator, can figure out people's skills and put them in the right place so that they can all work together to make something successful. If it doesn't work together and people just come together with no organization, everyone would be confused. So administrator would be someone who can organize everyone appropriately. So there we have ruling defined. There is a person in the Bible that shows this example. Go ahead and open your Bibles to Numbers chapter 27. We'll be looking at verses 15 through 22. Numbers is the fourth book of the Bible, the Old Testament. chapter 27, verses 15 through 22. I'm going to give you a little bit of context before we read these verses. Who is this person we're going to be looking at? Moses. Yes, Moses. I sign Moses this way or this way. Moses. So you probably know Moses pretty well, and the stories of him as he grew in the king's house for 40 years. Until he killed an Egyptian, and then he escaped for 40 years in the wilderness and hid and was a shepherd. Then he came back to Egypt and was trying to get the people all together. The 10 plagues happened, got the people, went over to the promised land, and they got in, right? No, they did not get into the promised land, because the 12 spies that were sent, there was 10 that were bad and 2 who were good. And 10 of the spies said, "Oh no, we can't get in there. There's giants in there and it's dangerous." And the 2 were saying, "Yes, we can. Let's go in. God promised us. Let's go. Let's do it." And so then they waited again another 40 years in the wilderness. During those 40 years, many people died, all the older generation, and then they were ready to take over and get in the promised land after 40 years. In Numbers, we see in this passage where they're pretty close to the end of that 40 years, and Moses is now understanding that they need new leaders. Moses is now about 120 years old. Wow, he's an old man. Older than Chang, and Chang's pretty old. So we have Moses, who's 120 years old. And says, we need new leaders. We need some new young leaders. So we're looking now in verse 15, and it says, "And Moses spake unto the Lord, saying, Let the Lord, the God of spirits of all flesh, set a man over the congregation, which may go out before them, and which may go in before them, and which may lead them out, and which may bring them in, that the congregation of the Lord be not as sheep which have no shepherd. And the Lord said unto Moses, Take thee Joshua the son of Nun, a man in whom is a spirit, and lay thine hand upon him. And set him before Eleazar the priest, and before all the congregation, and give him a charge in their sight. And thou shalt put some of thine honor upon him, that all the congregation of the children of Israel may be obedient. And he shall stand before Eleazar the priest, who shall ask counsel for him after the judgment of Urim before the Lord. At his word shall they go out, and at his word shall they come in, both he and all the children of Israel with him, even all the congregation. And Moses did as the Lord commanded him. So we see here Moses as they're approaching the end, and he's thinking they need some new young leaders to take over, to lead the people. Maybe you feel like, well, I'm getting old. We need some younger people, younger leaders. And this is how Moses felt. And Moses was pretty organized, and we're going to look at how he was in these verses. So first, in verse 16, we see that Moses knew when God's people needed another leader. He understood God's time and God's plan. He had that wisdom, and so Moses knew that it was time, and he went to God and said, Lord, this person who is going to lead, we need a person that's going to lead these people. Moses also recognized that he didn't want the people to be scattered without a leader. Remember, Moses was a shepherd for 40 years. He worked with his father-in-law as a shepherd. He watched over the sheep and took care of them. So he has that experience. When there's no shepherd, what happens to the sheep? Do you know what happens? If there's sheep without a shepherd, the sheep will just scatter. They'll just go about doing their own thing, and they'll just be lost. You know why? Because sheep are dumb. They don't know what they're doing. They just kind of wander around. They need someone who is willing to lead and guide them. Show them what to do, where to go. Then we see also that God chooses the leaders, and the men do not. Sometimes people say, oh, well, I want to choose that person. Well, for instance, for example, we are soon to vote for president. We have two choices. Seems like there might be a third one, I don't know. So we have Trump and Hillary. And the people will decide, the people will vote, and whoever wins will become president. But do you think God will be shocked at the results? No, God already knows. He already has a plan. for who will become the next leader. Just like the same thing happened in this church. After Pastor David passed, some of you might have been worried about who was going to take over. Do you think God was shocked when Pastor Mark came to become the pastor? No, God had a plan. Maybe some of you think, oh, well, I don't understand why this happened. I don't like this. I prefer someone else, or I like this person better, or I like Chang better, or, well, God has his own plan. Whoever leads God's people should have God's Spirit. And just like here in this passage, we see Joshua. And it says in the Bible there that Joshua, a man in whom is the Spirit. If one who had a plan and was planning to organize the next leader and did not follow God, the plan would just be a mess. It would be worthless. Then the next thing we notice is those who lead God's people should have God's Spirit. Recently, we've separated on Wednesday nights and had 2 different classes. And why are we doing this? So that we can teach the young people. Teach them, disciple them, how to have a relationship with God and what to do next. The leaders who already know what to do need to pass that on to the younger generation. In verse 19, everyone should be a witness to the charge of the leader. Since I have been here and have become the pastor here, Chang has been so great. He's been here for 35 years, but since I've been here, I've seen so much support, and I respect that and honor that. The same with Moses and Joshua. When Joshua becomes the leader, Moses supports and encourages Joshua and tells the people, look to Joshua. He is the leader. And Moses gives him the power. Don't come to me, go to him. Go to Joshua. He's the leader. And that's important. Also, the older leaders should help younger ones to be honored. When we look at the life of Moses and look at this passage, I just love the very end of verse 22. And Moses did as the Lord commanded him. God told him what to do. Moses obeyed. He did it. Now understand, Moses was very organized. He led over thousands of people. there were so many people coming to him that he had to set up judges. It was just a beautiful system that he had, and had everything organized to make it work and to be there for the people. So now as Moses recognizes that he needs to step down, he asks God who he should bring up. And God tells him Joshua. And he did it. We need to do the same thing. We need to always be looking at who's going to be next. And who is going to be the next generation. We shouldn't be satisfied as in our old age and say, okay, well, I'm done. Moses kept going until he was 120. Who's 120 years old here? No one. Keep going. Keep serving the Lord. Look for who is next and who we can invest in. Oh, well, now Pastor Mark is here, so he can just do it all and I'm done here. No, don't stop. Keep going. Help those who are next. I encourage you to keep going. Don't stop. We see how Moses was such a great administrator, had everything organized and leaders in their right place, and as he was nearing the end, he was looking for the one who would be qualified to take his place. Was Joshua and Moses the same? No, Joshua had a different personality. It's obvious, we see that, but he was younger and he was qualified to take over. And as Joshua took over, Moses supported him and encouraged him until he died. So we see ruling defined and demonstrated in Moses. Now this next picture, you might not like it. Just warning you. Do you know who this is? This is Hitler. Adolf Hitler. You see all these people? See how organized it looks. Hitler was a very, very organized person. Very detailed. Everything had to be perfect. And if there was no humility if there's no humility, there can be danger. It can be dangerous. In Romans 12:3, it says, "For I say, through the grace given unto me, to every man that is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think soberly, according as God hath dealt to every man the measure of faith." If you think, oh, well, I'm a really detailed person, I can administrate and I can handle it, and I'm really good at this. Well, so was Hitler. He was really good, and the people were drawn to him, and they loved him. But his words were full of hate. Why were people so drawn to him? He was a very organized person. He disciplined. He was a great administrator, but he was full of pride. And he was paranoid, and he killed several of the people who were just under him, because he was scared that they might take his place. He was paranoid. So one who is very detailed oriented, very good administrator has to be very careful and humble. It's very easy for this person to be prideful and look down on other people and know that other people will just make a big mess. I'm warning, be careful, be humble, think soberly. Let's look at Psalms 23. This is a famous psalm. David wrote this, Psalm 23. What is this talking about? Famous verse says, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." At that time, David was very good at what he did and was one of the strong leaders. Israel grew because he knew how to administrate war and win wars. But here he writes, "The Lord is my shepherd." This is like David saying, I'm just a sheep. I'm dumb. But Lord, you are my shepherd. You maketh me to lie down in green pastures, and leadeth me beside the still waters. And you leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For thou art with me, and thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. He recognizes that God is the ultimate leader. Without God's leadership, our skills are no good. Our administration, our details are no good without God. Remember the big ship, the Titanic. One boastful man was famous for saying, God himself can't sink this ship. And we see what happened. It sunk, and many people died. There was pride there. Be careful. Be careful what you say. In 1 John 4:18, says, there is no fear in love, but perfect love casteth out fear, because fear hath torment. He that feareth is not made perfect in love. Maybe you're very organized and good administrator, but if you have no love to people, you think, oh, I'm a good leader and I can look like a good leader and talk like a good leader, but if there is no love, you will fail. We are made perfect in love in the Lord. We should not have fear. I encourage you to build each other up in love. Don't just tell people, oh, you need to do this and you need to do this and I know what to do. You just need to listen to me and I'm better than you and I can plan better than you and just, I'm the leader. You go on commanding. Well, where's the love? I encourage you to love one another. Maybe you think, well, that's not my skill. One, I can detail. Oh, for me, I'm not very detailed oriented, but I'm more of a last minute kind of person. I don't really think things through and have it all planned out. I can just I'm telling you, as I'm preaching here, I'm preaching to myself here in 1 Corinthians 9:27. Paul is writing and he says, but I keep under my body and bring it under subjection, bring it into subjection, lest that by any means, when I have preached to others, I myself should be a castaway. I love Paul because he likes to talk a lot about sports and referencing the sports. Who likes sports? Who enjoys watching the Olympics? The Olympics are coming up soon, here in the summer. I love watching the Olympics and the different sports. If you're involved in a sport and you don't follow the rules, then what happens? What happens? You become disqualified. You're eliminated. For instance, if I'm getting ready to start the race and I start running before they say go, they will give me a warning and they say, okay, this is your warning. You do it again and you're out. If I do it again, I'm out. I'm disqualified. It's disqualified. It's kind of like this word here, castaway, disqualified. So as I'm preaching, and if I don't really follow the same things that I'm saying, this is what Paul is saying here. I don't want to become disqualified. I want to be a good, obedient, and good follower. Understand all the things that I do, I can't be perfect. You know, we all have weaknesses, of course. But there is room for improvement, and there should be improvement. I don't want to be saying these things, oh, you need to do better, but then I go and try to, and I still make mistakes. Well, I want to tell you up front that I have weaknesses, and I am working on improving myself in this area. I need to be better at it in organizing and getting people in and organizing leaders, but at the same time, for one to say, oh, you have lousy organization skills, well, you be careful. Where's the love? We've got to have it both ways. There's got to be balance. As I evaluate myself and humble myself. It's funny, a few days ago, someone and I were talking, and they said, hey, what does it mean? What does subjection mean? Submit mean? Does that mean obey? And I said, I signed humble. And this person said, well, I don't understand that. And I said, make myself lower and the other person higher. Oh, I understand. So that means that's what we need to do. Lower yourselves and live up to others. Make them higher. Exalt others. That's hard. That's a hard thing to do. To humble yourselves. Humble myself. Think about Jesus as he came from heaven. He came to earth. And he worked as a carpenter. He is God, and he's working as a carpenter. Sounds silly. So he goes on and he preaches, and people rebuke him and mock him, and then he just keeps going, and then he's on the cross. You can imagine, I'm God of this universe, and I'm hanging here on a cross. And he says, not my will, but your will. And he hangs there and dies. We can lower ourselves and humble ourselves. Jesus did. And what an example he is. Especially you or those who have the skill of leadership. You might think, well, I'm good at this, and I'm a good administrator, I can organize, and I'm a good leader, but humility is the hardest for you. You're not the best. Lower yourself, humble yourself. Serve, be a servant. You might say, yeah, well, but be quiet and serve. Smile, love. Don't be a slob. Don't be lazy. Clean it up. So we see ruling defined and ruling demonstrated. We see that in Moses, and then we see ruling with discipline, good humility, having humility, not being prideful. Application. Are you gifted with ruling? You might say, yeah, I'm pretty organized and I'm pretty specific and I like details. Well, are you using this skill? Or are you putting it aside? I encourage you to use it. If you're good with details and pay attention to specifics in administration, use it. But if you do not have that, are you like a slob, or do you make a mess? In Romans 12:11 it says, not slothful in business, but fervent in spirit, serving the Lord. We need to serve the Lord. We need to have good organization. We need to keep it clean. We don't need to be making a big mess. I'm reminding myself of the same thing. What can those gifted with ruling do? Usually a secretary is good with this, reminds people what to do, organize groups, leaders of organized groups, or lead the people. Some of the best leaders in the Bible are really good at organization. I think about Joseph. 7 years when he knew that there was going to be 7 years of famine, he was very organized and was ready for it. He was one of the best leaders. If you have good organization skills, you can be a great leader. You can. I encourage you to use it and not to waste your gift. So those who are gifted in ruling, or those of you that are not, think about this. Do better, improve, and use it. Serve the Lord with it. We can all serve the Lord with gladness. Looking to God, not for myself, not for recognition, not to be prideful, but to be serving the Lord in humility. I encourage you to do that. Let's pray. Father in heaven, I give you myself, my life in service to you. Help me to be better organized. And I pray for those who have this gift that they would use it. I pray that they would come up, that they would be using this gift, and that they would use this administration, organization for your ministry. And I pray that we would help young leaders to come and rise up and be leaders. I pray that you be with this invitation. In Jesus' name, amen.